Okay, so we are going to start back up with our Hogwarts where we left off. If for some reason you wanted to start, like if you had been coding along but you weren't happy with where you got in your version, if there was problems in your version, you could go and just grab my code that exists right now and clone it. But there are a few steps that you would need to go through in order to get the app actually up and operational. I've just added those to the README, and so there's a variety of steps here involving, like, you got to clone it first, then you got to navigate to the folder, you got to run bundle install to grab all the Ruby dependencies, yarn install to grab all the JavaScript dependencies, Rails DB migrate to actually create the database tables, and then Rails DB seed to run the seed script and populate those tables. And then after that, you could finally run the Rails server. So yeah, so that's something you could do if you want to do that right now. It might take too long, right? I might start coding and you'd be like sitting waiting for like bundle and yarn install to go. Okay, so let's look at where we were at and then where we want to get to. So I'm in the project inside of VS Code. I've got it opened up. I'm at a command prompt here and I'm typing Rails S to get my Rails server going. And I'm going to open up another command prompt that I can just use for running other commands. In all likelihood, you're probably getting the same warning that I get whenever I run Rails within the WSL. It doesn't seem to affect anything. I tried for a while to get rid of this, and other warnings appeared. So once I got rid of this one, a new warning popped up, and then when I squashed that warning, another one popped up. So I'm just okay with that warning being there. It doesn't seem to have any adverse effect on the project. So Puma's up and running. Llamas in Pajamas is the code name of the day, and we should be able to go to localhost :3000 and see our Hogwarts application in action. There's one thing that I need to do that you won't have to do, and that's I've been developing this application with the other section. And what that means is that I've been adding new migrations and running them, and that means the database that sort of goes into what's sort of present here, it's in a different state than I actually want it to be. There's a few things I could do. I could hop over to the branch, the Git branch that I was working on with the other section, and I could sort of step backwards through the migrations. But because I have a seed script, I could also just delete the database and recreate it completely. And so I'm going to try that tact. I'm going to go to the DB folder, and I'll probably need to kill the server while I'm doing this. There's my database, this development SQLite 3 database as a file. I'm just going to move that temporarily to a .old file, and then I will go back here and run Rails DB migrate. So again, this is something that you shouldn't have to do. This should recreate the database for me. There it is. And it should also repopulate the database with the seed script with a DB seed. And I can go and start the server back up again. That'll solve problems that I probably would have run into later on. There we go. So we're back here. So when last we were working on this application, we had houses and students, and there was a one-to-many relationship between those models. And on our house index, we were listing like the house by name and its points, and we had worked with the routing system to be able to go to a house show page. That house show page listed all the students that were present, and allowed us to do something like this, like clicking through to those students. There are a few other things that I would now like to implement. And so right now, in terms of models, we have a student model, we have a house model, and there's that relationship between the two of them. I want to add in a teacher model, and I want this teacher model. The teacher model is effectively going to be very similar to the student model, right? Because the student has a name, and the student has like a house ID, which is a foreign key. Well, that's going to be the same for teacher. There's an argument to be made here that I could actually have one model with a role on it, right? Like, so I could have like a person model, and that person could be a student or a teacher, but I want to create a separate model because I'm going to get all of you to do some implementation work where you actually go and sort of implement some of the controller actions that are needed. So we're going to be okay with the fact that student and teachers are both people and that their data is effectively the same and their relationship is effectively the same. I also want to add in an appointment where the appointment is going to be a join table to relate students and teachers. So there will be a student ID foreign key and a teacher ID foreign key. That also is simplified here by not having them in one table, two separate foreign keys. And then like when this appointment is scheduled for, like so like a scheduled appointment. I hate when I have like the name of the table in the column name. Maybe just say scheduled. Scheduled time, but it's a date time. Scheduled date time, but that's like the data type. I don't know. Sometimes I worry too much about dates. I'm just going to say scheduled. And this is going to be a date time. But you're right, it is a scheduled time. So we're going to create a couple new models like that. And then tomorrow, I want to bring in this concept of some pages that are sort of editable by an admin. That can be like an about page or a contact page or a frequently asked questions page. So eventually we're going to bring in this idea of there being a page model, but I won't flesh that out right now. We'll focus our attention on these. So we'll start by implementing the teacher and the appointment. We're going to need to create the teacher model first. Otherwise, Rails will get confused when we ask for a foreign key to something that doesn't yet exist. So we won't create the appointment until teacher is first created. And then remember that at any given time, if you want to sort of see what the current state of your database is, you can always look in the DB folder and look at the schema. And this schema file is a Ruby representation of what the database looks like. So again, we could see that a house has a name and a certain number of points and some timestamps, and a student has a name and a house ID and some timestamps. So eventually we're going to see teachers and appointments appear in here as well. So we'll start with the generation of the teacher, and so we'll say Rails generate model teacher, and the teacher has a name, which is a string, and then house, which it references. This is one of the places where I would like to argue with the Rails core team. I feel like it should be house, and house is a reference. But I didn't get to choose that. They made it references, and so we have to use references there. And that's all we need here, right? So Rails generate model, the name of the model, and then the list of the properties and their data types separated by colons. That'll generate the model and the migration to actually generate the teachers table. So there's the migration, there's the model. The references data type, that's the foreign key. So that's like what Rails calls foreign keys, it calls them references. And so a Rails DB migrate will run that migration file. It'll create the teachers table. There we are. And now we can open that schema file up again, and we can see that in there, along with houses and students, teachers is in there now too. We can also open up the teacher and the house model. A house has many students. The house now also has many teachers.
Can you separate them by column, or do you have to see how something?
That's a good question. I don't know. We can experiment with that. Once I sort of finish the annotations, we can go into Ruby console and we'll see. I have a feeling we're going to need multiple annotations, but we can poke at that. And then a teacher, because when we built this model, we mentioned that it referenced house, so it already put in the belongs to there. But it would be nice to have a little bit of validation, so we can say validates, name, presence, true. Yeah. I often have an S instead of a C there as well. Or something, or sometimes like this, presents, like we're getting presents for Christmas. But that's not how it is either. So that's all we need to do as far as annotating these models. We should now be able to, if we opened up a Rails console, we should be able to find a house and create a teacher associated with that house. So if I grab a reference to a house, so say h equals house.first, that'll give me a reference to Hufflepuff, and then I can say h.teachers.create, and we can have a teacher named Mr. Goo Goo McGoo. And that went and created that teacher, and it automatically set up the association for us by way of the foreign key. You can see the house ID is the same as the primary key for Hufflepuff. And so we can now get that teacher. So I can say t equals teacher.first, and I should be able to say t.house.name. So navigating through that association, and that should tell me Hufflepuff, and it does. And I could probably go the other way as well. I could go to like Hufflepuff, which is h.teachers.first, and that is Mr. Magoo. And I could even just chain on .name there to get the name out. So that's one of the things I often do with Rails is like before utilizing new things that I've added in my project in the web part of the application, I poke around in the console to make sure that how I'm expecting these models and their associations to work actually works as I'm expecting. And so that seems to prove it out, and I can feel good about it. You know, if I was coding on my own, I'd probably have tests that would be confirming that for me. Okay, that's good. Next up, we want an appointment. And this is going to be this idea of having a join table with two different foreign keys, but also a little bit of extra data when that meeting was scheduled. So, oh wait, I'm going to do some Git stuff here. I will say added a teacher model with an association to the house model. All right, so now we want to go and generate Rails generate. What are we generating? Another model. It is an appointment, and this appointment has this scheduled field, which is a date time. It has a student, which it references, and a house, which it references. So that sort of scrolled off the line, but there you go, Rails, G for generate. We're running the model generator. The name of the model is appointment. We have a scheduled property of type datetime, a student property of type references, and a house property of type references. Yes, it is. Thank you. We would just add. Oh, yes. Yeah, so this one is student, but the other one isn't house. Thank you for that. You never know. You could have an appointment with a house in the Harry Potter world, right? Anything can happen. Thank you for that. So that was a typo. Student references, teacher references. I can now hit enter on this command and have this model generated for me along with its migration. If we look at the migration, you can see there's the scheduled date time that we asked for and the two references and the timestamps that will be added to this table. And so we can Rails DB migrate to run that migration. That updates our database. And then I will open up the appointment and I will open up the student model. I already have the teacher model open. So an appointment belongs to a student and a teacher. Rails put those annotations in there for me because I asked for those references when I generated it. I can also say like validates that the scheduled, scheduled as a presence of true. So at a minimum, we have to supply some data for when this appointment is scheduled. The other side of the association, though, that's going to be up for us to add, and that has to happen on both sides. So a teacher, I have to annotate the teacher and the student. And so if an appointment belongs to a teacher, that means a teacher has many appointments, plural. And because the appointments lead us to a student, that means that a teacher also has appointments with many students, and it's through the other association. You do because it's going through it. So like this through appointments is referencing this. It does not infer that. At least I don't think it does. Oh yeah, we didn't play around with the other associations. When we go back to the console, we can play around with both of those concepts and see how much Rails magic does or does not do for us. And we can go to the other side of this join and add a very similar set of annotations. So a teacher has many appointments and has many students through appointments. On the student side of things, a student has many appointments and has many teachers through those appointments. Looking good. And again, I'll drop down to the console and I'll see if this is all wired up correctly. And so I'll run the Rails console. I'll get access to both a teacher and a student. So I'll say T equals teacher.first, S equals student.first. So I've got both of those. And now I should be able to create an appointment that has a student, which is that S student, a teacher, which is that T teacher. Is that what I said? Yep, T teacher. And then a scheduled time. What is Rails going to want for this? Is it going to want a date object? Sure. Let's give it a date time. I'm sort of guessing right now that there's a thing called parse on date time. I know there is on date. Let's see how this goes. This appointment will be on Halloween at 10, 10, 10. This might blow up. Let's see if this does a thing or not. Hey, it worked. And there it is. I wonder if I could have just passed in the string. I'm not sure if Rails would have known or not. I think it would have. Let's make another one where I just put in the string. So they're also going to meet in the next month, but later in the day. Okay, fair enough. So I now have two appointments set up. They're both set up between the same two teachers. They're both teachers with a foreign key pointing to the primary key of 1, which makes sense because I did like teacher.first and student.first. Yours will probably be different. If you have run your seed script a few times, you probably will have slightly different IDs in there. But we now should be able to see these associations. So I should be able to travel through those appointments to get from a teacher to a student or vice versa. So from a teacher, I should be able to get the teacher's list of appointments. There's 2 of them. If I go to the first one, I should be able to get the associated student's name. There's the associated student's name. And I should be able to go the opposite direction. So my teacher's name is Mr. Google McGoo. And so if I go to my student and I ask for its collection of appointments, if I get the last one this time, still with the same teacher, I should be able to get the teacher's name in that way too. So that's working. I could also go to the appointment and get information about both the student and the teacher, right? So I should be able to go to like appointment.first and get the teacher name, or appointment.first and get the student name as well. And that's nice. That's really nice. Working with join tables when you're dealing with just raw SQL can mean a lot of typing, and personally, I tend to forget a lot of how SQL works between the times when I have to use it, and so it means me Googling things and looking up things about joins. And with Active Record, I don't need to do that, right? I'm just going to have the SQL generated for me. For sure. What do you want to see? Oh, so it worked when I just put in a string. Because I imagine what happens is like internal to active record, it probably tries, if it's of type datetime, it probably just parses it through datetime, but it also accepted a datetime object. So you could do one or the other. So that indicates to me that those associations are now set up very nicely. What do we have next to do? Well, there's a few things. We could create a appointments controller to display some of that information. I think that's the route I will take because we're almost at the end of class. So I will quickly build up an appointments controller, and then we will sort of continue some work on this tomorrow. And so what that appointments controller would look like is the following. I'll just quickly save this stuff to Git. Created a appointment model with associations to teachers and students. And then I could do a Rails generate, not in there, Rails generate controller appointments, and I'll just make an index. Then I'll save that. Generated an appointments controller with an index action/view. And I can go open that stuff up. So I can open up the appointments controller. I can go to the views folder and see that there is an appointments folder that has been generated for me with an index in there. And inside of here, I should be able to load up all of my appointments by going to appointments.all. And then inside of the view, I will make that H1 just be appointments, and then I should be able to loop through all of those appointments. Matching end, and then maybe I'll make this like an unordered list of LIs, where I say I say appointment.teacher.name will be meeting with appointment.student.name on appointment.scheduled. Oh, forgot my and then I close the LI, and all is right in the world. Give me a moment to see if this actually works. Oh, I'll need a proper route for it. That's another thing you always have to do. Don't forget the routing. Config, routes. Get rid of the default route that comes in there, and then say resources, appointments, only index. So let me test this out and then I can come back to my code if you need to see some of it. /appointments. Oh, I typoed. There's an S there, which shouldn't be there. That's typo number 1. Appointment. So grabbing all the appointments with appointment.all. And there are my 2 appointments. They happen to be with the 2 same teachers. That's all I made. Tomorrow, we will go into the seed script and we'll properly generate a bunch of appointments between teachers and students and generate some like associated times with them. Is there any part of my code that anyone needs to see? Maybe the index? And I can also split here. Is there a hotkey for splitting the screen? Is this it right here? Control T? Cool. So here's the route that existed. And then there's the view. So that is going to generate a similar route to a GET request to /appointments. That is going to go to the appointments controllers index action. So had we written that out manually, that's what that would look like. And there's the associated view. All right, so as I said, next class we will fix up the seed script. We still don't have a controller for teachers, so we need to build that as well. And then I also mentioned earlier on today that we're going to create some semi-static pages that only admins can update. So we'll create a page model and controller for doing that. And that will wrap up the Harry Potter example in the course. So I'm going to stop the video now and I'll leave my code up on the screen if you need to continue to see it.